Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I'm here today with Rich Leto, originally from Philadelphia and now from
Indeed, I
Columbus.
am. Born and
So,
raised.
welcome, Rich. Thanks for being here.
Same here, Bob.
I want to ask you. I always ask people this. The first question I usually ask them is, why and how and when did you get started?
So it's definitely 40 years ago, meaning in my 20s, um, started to ask my parents, where did my grandparents come from? They gave me some information. I scratched it down on a piece of paper and I put the paper on the top of my bureau and never did much with it, let's say. And then one day, still 40 years ago, I said, let me see what I can dig up, my roots, right? At that time, nothing was digitized. It was actually going to city records office. I actually had to mail something to the National Archives where I had to fill out an application, give them some names, give them some dates, and then I would get some copies back, pay for that. Like I said, this is 40 years ago. I went to the free library, looked up some old newspapers via microfiche to get some obituaries to sort of connect the dots a little bit better, to make sure I had the right dates, to see if the obituaries had any more relevant information. And basically, I compiled a nice little folder of information, let's say, right? So I put that folder in a closet and I never opened it until recently, maybe a couple years ago. So 40 years ago, I started, but I never completed.
Yeah, that must have been some hard work 40 years ago doing all of that.
It was.
So the photo behind you, which family is that? Is that mom's family or dad's family?
So that's my dad's family, on the paternal side. I'm a third generation. So this picture showing the first generation, the foreign born, my grandfather's the one standing, and he's got his hand on my dad's shoulder. So that's my father there, Lewis. And then my grandmother's sitting, and she's holding the youngest. So it was my grandfather was Francesco, and then my grandmother was Caterina. So they're the first generation, and all those siblings there are my aunts and uncles who are the second generation.
Yeah, I mean that's an awesome photo. So let's say one, two, three, four, five, six, seven
And there's a
combined.
little guy. There's a little guy. Seven, if you wanted to know. Five girls and two boys.
Oh, that's great. My mom had there was originally 11. Two died very very young.
Wow,
One was born in Italy. My grandmother was pregnant with another one on the boat, and then there were seven born here.
it's amazing, amazing. Their history, I know. My grandfather came over first, but he was married in Italy to my grandmother. So he makes the trip, and then my grandmother comes with my aunt, that's the tallest girl there, as a baby. So they made the trip, and they settled in Philadelphia. They're from Calabria, a very, very small town village, as they all are, Santa Caterina Ionio on the Ionian Sea.
What year did they come?
We can trace 1902, 1910. Some of the documents prove that.
Oh, so pretty
And my
early.
great, oh yeah, they're definitely in that mass migration. Um, my grandfather became a naturalized citizen. Was able to get his paper of declaration and then the naturalization form itself.
Oh, nice, nice. And what did he do when
So he was a typical laborer, didn't have much of a skill. What I was told is he worked either in the subways or in the water and sewage systems in the city, so to speak.
yeah, well, those guys they were hard workers. They weren't afraid to work. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
they built our country, right? They were the
Absolutely,
backbone. Yeah.
absolutely. Um, now, do you know if your grandmother worked at all? I know some of the women were seamstresses and things like that.
I could tell you that she was a how I'm going to be honest with you, she was definitely I don't want to say illiterate, but I might say meaning she never learned to write or speak the English language. That's pretty much a definite. Yeah. She
Yeah,
cared for the children. That
yeah.
was,
My mom's mom was like that too, and she never learned to read or write. Although she
yeah.
did. She's I guess because of the kids. I mean, she did learn enough English. So now, how far back have you been able to get the family?
Okay, so so let me fast forward, meaning here's this folder I had 40 years ago. So recently I pulled it out like a couple of years ago. I said, how could I further this research? But I knew I had Ancestry and I had Facebook. So I went the Facebook route. So what I did is I found the Facebook group of the town, Santa Caterina del Orno. I posted some information, I posted some photos, and then I asked if anybody knew my relatives. And I got a mountain of comments back, all in Italian. So I had to use Google Translate, even though Facebook did that. And I got all these comments. Some were actually in Italy, but the big majority of them were in Australia. What I found out is that after World War II, many immigrants made it to Australia as opposed to the States. So the person in Australia that I really contacted, he had a family tree already on Ancestry. So he's able to, so I didn't go that far back. He went pretty far back, probably 1600s. And I gave him information to fill in on my side, probably 1850 and forward. So Facebook really broke the ground. And then to tie in with the people from Australia that were like third and fourth cousins removed was really fascinating to me.
Yeah, and that's how I found my dad's mom's family was on Facebook, because her name is not a common name. So, when I put it out there, it was pretty easy. And my cousin, my fourth cousin, Cinzia, she started a Facebook group, Piramalo, and she thought she was going to find people from South America and Spain, because the family was originally from Spain. She had no idea that there was anybody in America. It was just, fascinating. And I didn't know anybody was there. So it was a great find. So that's pretty good. Get back to the 1600s. Any interesting stories from back then, or any?
Not really. Well, what I came to find out, there were different branches of the Letos, meaning there were other people named Leto, but they weren't actually part of my family, which I couldn't ascertain what that meant in some respect. But no, I've been told that the village is really it was a fire decimated it in 1980. It's kind of in ruins. There might be still the church there. Everybody moved off the hilltop into the marina towards the ocean. And the only way to get to that hilltop is this road. They sent me some pictures still. I tried to ask for where my family's front door was, because that was a big thing, the portico, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get a little bit of that. But people have told me, you got to visit there, because here's the bottom line. I've never visited that town. That's the next step in this journey.
I'm dying to go back. We're supposed to be there now.
See, it's that simple, Bob.
Have you been to Italy at all?
So no, I'm embarrassed to say no.
Don't be embarrassed. I only been once, so don't. You shouldn't be embarrassed. Okay. But it's when we went, we were in Rome. Everybody has to go to Rome. And then we went to Naples briefly, just to pick up a car to drive to Sorrento, because my son was a baby and we were just going to spend a week relaxing in Sorrento and a little sightseeing. I had no idea at the time, 25 years ago, that my both my father's parents lived about a half a mile from the train station. Wow. I only found that out recently. I could have walked there.
Right.
And this past Saturday, I was supposed to be, these third and fourth cousins and everything. But I'm going next May. I don't care what disease is. I'm going.
Good. I'm with you too. Yes.
I'm tired of this crap.
Yes.
So now, how about your mom's family?
So I can tell you, it's the same scenario. 1902, 1910, early immigration. My grandfather comes over. He's from the region of Puglia, a little town called Bicarri. He comes over and he works at a Stetson hat company in Philadelphia. Sometime in 1910, my grandmother comes over and they get married in Philadelphia. And I do have those records at the local Italian National Parish Church. And then he opens up his own business, an entrepreneur. He opens up a hat store, which was pretty cool back then because everybody had a fedora or a hat. And I've got some pictures of that. He became a naturalized citizen. What I can tell you is, though, that he dies in 1930, only to have my grandmother raise also 7 children up until her death in 1960. So kind of a sad story there. But my cousin has connected, and he goes to that town in Italy all the time. He found the local historian, and he's really connected with some cousins. And I hope to one day get to that side of the family in Puglia.
Right, that's Eric, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and he has the photo of the hat.
Exactly. As we all do. Yes, that's something we cherish most definitely, Bob, as you know, with your own family. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have the photo of my unfortunately my grandfather's not in it. His brother's in it and my uncle's in it. But we have they had an embroidery shop in New York City.
That's neat.
I don't know if I told you, I've said it on a couple of the podcasts, but when I met my cousin Linda, who our families were very closely tied and we never knew each other, her mother saved beads from my grandfather's shop. And she brought us beads. So, you know, at the earliest, these things go back to probably the 20s or 30s, the latest probably the 50s. But to hold them in your hand, knowing that
they're
those
heirlooms,
were your grandfather's.
they're artifacts, they could be in a museum, but they hold so much value to us personally. But we have a family artifact. We have a handwritten note, obviously probably in my grandmother's handwriting, all in Italian. It lists the children. It lists when they got married, when they came over. And it's this personal memento. It's, like I said, we cherish it. It should be in a museum, just as you're explaining too.
Well, that's really special, though, to have the family history written down, you know. Italians, Americans, they kept, especially the Protestants, they kept a lot of stuff in the family Bible. You know, they would write everything. For some reason, Italians didn't do that. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's. To have something like that in your own handwriting, and I have a couple of things signed by my grandmother. One thing that written in their, but to have it written in their own hand is really something. And it just popped up. The 2 things that just popped up on Ancestry just recently. My father's naturalization record. I had the little card, but I didn't have the full record.
Exactly. It had the serial number. Yes, that's what started my journey. Correct.
I don't know if you can see it, but
yes.
So I had that, and then I never knew that my grandmother applied. I had no idea. She applied after him, and her signature is on it. Which, anytime you see a signature, I have my 3rd great grandfather's signature on a record in Italy.
Wow.
And his son and my grandfather. So when you see these signatures, I'm getting goosebumps now talking.
Exactly. No, like I said, artifacts. You think museum, but they're cherished to us. Then they could be in a museum because they tell such a story, like we're doing here.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We're fortunate, and.
So now I know Eric's been back to the town a lot. Now, have you been in contact with the cousins that he knows over there?
Wow, it's funny you should mention that. So I don't know where to go with this. So he's over there about a month ago, and he sends me a text. He says, "Are you available to talk?" I said, "Sure." I knew he was in Italy, so he picks up the phone. He calls me on my cell, and he says, "Hey, I'm talking to one of our relatives that would like to hear you." Now, Eric's a 4th generation. I'm the 3rd. But this woman was speaking in Italian, and he had to translate everything. My understanding is that this woman was somehow related to my grandmother, and my grandmother had sent her all these family photos that this lady had for 70 years. And I recognized every photo that they were talking about. I said, sure. And we had no idea. They were postcards with some Italian writing in the back that he photoed and then eventually sent, but they were from my grandmother sending it to her relatives overseas.
We'll be right back.
Experience Italy like never before, traveling with a scheduled group or create your own bespoke tour with friends with PhilItaly.com. Pack your bags and follow Phil. That's www.philitaly.co.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
I mean,
and they saved them.
I mean, you can see my mouth. I don't know. I mean, my grandmother's handwriting, and they're like my uncles, and they're like confirmation, they're Holy Community, telling her about her children, making these sacraments. I was blown away. I'll put it to you lightly. And I hope to get to meet that person someday. Yeah. So he's connected. I'm very thankful for that.
That's amazing. Amazing that they saved it. I mean, I've heard, some other stories where they, have one or two things in Italy or a picture or something like that, but to actually have stuff that your grandmother sent back to them.
Like I said, I'm in awe. I don't know. I'm getting the goosebumps now. Yes. And I could imagine how he felt being in her presence, seeing those things, because he knew once she pulled out this box, wow.
So Eric took the pictures of these, yeah?
He took pictures of the picture, yes. And
I'll have to bother him for that.
He made a Facebook group that I'll have to share with you, and you can see them, yes.
Oh, okay, because I'd like to put some of them on here since we're talking about it. So let's, all right, so we got the background and everything like that. What was it like growing up in, the second city to New York City, Italian-wise, Philadelphia?
I like that, because I'll take it a step further. We were always in the shadows, right, of New York, which was okay. We were considered the underdog, even on sports-wise. But yeah, the second largest influx of Italian immigrants. I mean, we're right there. It was typical. You pick up any book about the Italian-American experience, we lived it. Those people standing behind you, myself, my sisters, my cousins, we lived it. Festivals, the sacraments with your family all around, obviously the Sunday. What I like to share is that story. My father would always take me to every Sunday religiously. My father would take me to my grandmother's house. She'd be sitting in her chair, her eyes wide up, but she'd always have $1 in her hand. And she would grab my hand and give me that $1. And then you had to sit there with her for a while, and then dinner would come and it'd be the Sunday. But it was typical. Like I said, you read any book about, I put on quotes, the Italian-American experience. Like I said, we wrote the book. We wrote the book, just as I'm sure you can say also.
Well, yeah. And, my family was in, I said this to somebody the other day, New York, he's from Boston, the north end of Boston. And I said that, Boston's north end is kind of what I see the typical, if you're going to compare it to a Little Italy, it's the one in Manhattan, Spring Street and downtown and all of that. That's the way the north end is. But New York was unique in that every borough had its own Italian community. And some of them had 2 or 3. Brooklyn, the Bronx, the Queens, Staten Island later, which is where all the mafiosa guys went up on the hill there.
Right.
But that's I think New York is unique in that way because there were so many of these neighborhoods, and mine in Corona was small. And if you know the King of Queens,
oh yeah,
the Lemon Ice King of Corona, that shot at the end, right?
Nice.
My grandmother lived 4 blocks from there, something like that.
Oh,
so
awesome.
We would go to the Lemon Ice King.
Awesome.
Don't mix the flavors. You could only have one flavor. You couldn't have
right?
you couldn't have lemon and grape. If you asked for
Yeah,
lemon,
yeah.
it was like the soup Nazi. Get out of here. You can't do that.
Now we called it water ice. That's
Yes.
what we called it in
Yeah.
Philadelphia. Water
Yeah,
ice.
we called it lemon ice, no matter what the flavor was. It was,
God.
it was always lemon ice. But, 50s and 60s, everybody on the block was Italian. I think there was maybe one non-Italian. And we had
Same.
one
Same.
feast right outside my grandmother's gate in the summertime,
Wow. Awesome.
which was a lot of fun. But my mom's mom was like that. She had 23 grandchildren, and her life just revolved around the grandchildren. That's it. That's all she cared about.
Familia again.
Yeah. The more the better. The longer they stayed, the better. She I think when she died, she had 23 grandchildren and something like, I don't know,
No, that's
32 or
wonderful.
35 great grandchildren.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. But to get back to it, same with, we had the butcher shop, we had the pastry shop that were run by Italians. So, my mother would say, go get me some sausage today, get the kind with the fennel or get the sweet sausage.
Fennel's the only one. I love the fennel one. That's my favorite.
So it was the same type of community. And then, how it was, my aunt lived like 2 blocks away. And then, every now and then my aunt would, can you come over and fix that light bulb for me? Your uncle can't do that, and I would go help her, little, and then she would slip me $5 or something. So
did you have the kids table growing up?
Well, I mean, you're going back when we were kids.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sure. And you sat with your cousins, all the cousins. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then the adults would sit in the kitchen or something, and your table might be off to another room. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. There was always you always wanted to be old enough to get to the next level up. We had in my grandmother's backyard, we would have 3 levels. In the yard, there would be there was like a covered gazebo type of thing, right, with a table, and that's where the aunts and uncles sat. And maybe you could squeeze in there every once in a while, and then there was another table where the older cousins would sit, and we were relegated because I was towards the younger of the cousins. We were relegated to the steps, or the little ledge by the grapevine, that kind of stuff,
Sure.
But and being as the youngest, we always had to go to the store. We either had
Same
to go,
here.
Yeah.
Same here. And the proprietor knew who you were. Oh, you're Elsie's son. Look who it is. It's Richard. Elsie's son. What does she want? They knew it wasn't for me. What does your mother want?
Yeah, that's right.
And you'd have the list or something. Yeah.
My uncle, in my town, 2 of my uncles, my mom's brothers, moved to my town, College Point, after a few years. And my Uncle Tom, there was a grocery store right outside his yard. You walked out the yard, there was a little grocery store there. And he would write a note. Please give Bob a quart of beer. I'll pay you, later. And you go with the note, and he'd actually give you the quart of beer in the bag, and you walk next door. No more. You get away with that anymore.
Credit. That was credit, right? Yeah,
Credit,
sure. And you had to pay your bill. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
But when my uncle moved to where we were, he used to go. My father worked on Sundays because he worked for the Daily News, and that was his day to work. And when my uncle moved, I guess I was about 8, 9, or 10 or something like that. And his house was a few blocks away, and I would walk there. And then we go to my grandmother's house, and there was probably almost 2 miles long. This one straight long road. And he would say to me, "You want to drive?" And I'd say, "Sure." And I'd sit on his lap with a big steering wheel and drive that one straight road, from College Point until we got to the L line, and then then he would take over again. But those kinds of things, that's what people did back then,
Yeah, they took care of us. I'm so thankful for my aunts and uncles. I mean, they looked after us.
I always say I had 9 moms and dads.
Right.
Because they would do anything for you. They would take care of you. If you went to their house, you were like you were like their kid, and you'd be disciplined like their kid too.
Oh, right. And I don't know, but you could say the same. They never missed a birthday. There was always a birthday card with a $5 in it or something. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, maybe people 100 years ago said the same thing. I don't know. But you didn't disrespect these people. You wouldn't dare disrespect an aunt or uncle.
No, we were fortunate, taught right, and we're fortunate. We're very lucky. Yeah.
I know, and it's
to come from humble beginnings, and like I said, we owe so much to those. I mean, to go back a little bit with the whole journey, it's like they left out of Naples. What I always found is, okay, they got on the ship at Naples, but how did they get from the village to Naples? And I hear a donkey, I hear a wagon, then they had to wait in Naples. I mean, we complain when we wait at an airport because the plane's late. I mean, I don't know how they made the trek. I don't know.
I know. And then the boat ride was no fun either. I interviewed somebody. She came in 1954, and the boat ride was horrible. She told me about how bad it was. So you can imagine what it was like in 1900.
And then, the whole Ellis Island with the customs officials, what they went through. Like I said, you can't fathom it, but that's why we just honor, and we're so thankful for what they've done for us, and then for our country.
And the sacrifices, like to your point, you think back, you call somebody now and you don't answer, and you're like wondering where they are, and it took maybe 3 weeks to get a letter over there. There was no phone calling or Zoom or anything like that.
I just can't fathom, but like you said, the sacrifice we could never even think about, comprehend.
And that's why, that's one of the reasons why I do this, is because I'm hoping it doesn't get lost. I'm hoping that some of these stories get out there, and the younger Italian Americans get to understand some of this stuff, and they don't, they may hear an Italian speak in a movie, or they may go to Italy and hear the. But we lived with the language. We grew up hearing that accent.
And you're sharing that. That's the good part. You're telling our story. You're sharing it. I applaud you for that. And it's important to be told, and
Yeah, and that's why working with. I'll do a little plug on the thing I'm doing with Anthony Riccio, with the voices from the past. You listen to these tapes. These people who were born in the late 1800s, early 1900s, talking in 1976 or 78 about their trip and their thing, and it's just, one woman was talking about she had 14 brothers and sisters in Sicily, 14, and she said the girls used to have to switch shoes. There was one pair of shoes for every 2 girls, so when they went to mass, one girl would go to the mass and then come home and give the shoes to the other girl so she could go to mass.
Once again, that story's captured, thankfully, now in audio. But for us to comprehend what's transpired there is unfathomable.
Yeah. And, but then they do tell good stories about the simpler life, and going out and picking the grapes, or, getting the eggs from the chickens. And they had a rough life over there, but it was no picnic when they got to America either.
No, it was struggles. They were discriminated against, all of that. Didn't assimilate well, but then they were smart. They came up with their own benevolent societies, mutual aid societies, Sons of Italy, the Sons and Daughters. So, somebody was smart. Hey, there's
They came up with Frank Sinatra.
Enough said. Enough said. And we can go down the list of names. Like you said, you picked Frank, Verdi, Guillermo Marconi, it goes on and on.
Joe DiMaggio and those guys, they were household names in America. I remember my dad telling me they used to go see the movie, and Frank Sinatra would be singing for like 35 cents or something like that. Back in, I guess, before he was famous, I guess, back in the early 40s or something like that. Been so much contribution by them, and I did a little piece on the Italian Medal of Honor winners, and people don't realize that these guys were really brave men, and
John, I forget the last name.
Bassiglione.
Yeah,
I mean, he was
exactly sure. That's great history, isn't it?
He was the consummate one.
There you go.
But
yep.
there was, and I don't know if you know this, there were 7 Italians with Custer at Custer's last stand, and the only survivor was Giovanni Martini, the bugler, who the reason he survived is that they sent him with a message to the other guys to say, hey, there's a crap load of Indians out here. And that's the only reason that he survived, because he was sent back with the message.
Yeah, I love great stories of those, like you said, that were the trailblazers, let's say. And it was across the spectrum. You pick Frank Sinatra. Philadelphia had Mario Lanza. He was, the second Caruso. I mean, all around, whether it was in sports, Angelo and Dundee, what he did for boxing, and, the music side and theater, and just everywhere, we made our mark, and that's good that we talk about it still. And keep that at the forefront.
And certainly don't forget the sacrifices the people made to get us here.
Nicely said. Yes, definitely, Bob.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Rich. I really appreciate you taking the time. And,
sure.
We'll keep in touch, and maybe we'll have to do a 3-way with me, you, and Eric.
That'd be nice. I would love that. That would be really nice. Well, I applaud what you're doing. Like I said, genealogy today is kind of easy, but sometimes there's a tree already built in Ancestry, but you still got to dig. I found a Library of Congress site that has digitized newspapers, and some are in the Italian, and found some of my family references in there way back. So there's so much more to uncover, let's say, but I feel good where my roots are. I found them, and I'm glad that I can share that with you, and then everybody else, and what you're doing too, for everybody else that has a story to tell. Yes.
Yeah, and that's the point. And anybody listening, I'm always looking for more stories.
Perfect.
So, all right. Well, thanks again, Rich.
Hey, goodbye, Bob. Thanks. Talk to you later.